Tuesday, December 17th of the Ojai City Council. Let me read one note before we begin, which is at special meetings, as is today, the City Council allows for public comments on notice agenda items only in accordance with the Brown Act. So we will not have general public comments not on the agenda today. Hopefully that was clear for everyone. Mr. Montgomery, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Yes, Mayor. Mayor Gilman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lang.
Here.
Councilmember Rule.
Here.
Councilmember Whitman.
Here.
Councilmember Mang.
Here.
Thank you. And Mr. Montgomery, will you let us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, Mayor. Welcome, community. Please rise as you are able. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome here, everybody, and thanks for making a special effort to come out to our one item for tonight, pickleball hours and measures at City Hall. And we will begin with a staff report. Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make this brief. The Ojai Pickleball Act was approved by the voters at the general election in November. Since that time, it has been certified by the Ojai City Council. That was on November 10th. It is slated to go into effect on December 20th. One challenge that we face as a city is the act is silent as to what the hours for the pickleball courts shall be. I wrestled with this topic quite a bit, scouring through the Ojai Municipal Code and policies and procedures. We have released information to the council going one way, going another way, trying to decide what the hours should be. But the bottom line is the city manager does not have the authority to set the hours for the pickleball courts. It's a recommendation according to the code from the Parks and Recreation Commission, but ultimately you as city council have the authority to make that determination. So we have in front of you tonight a proposed resolution. I've characterized it as a starting point. The resolution basically uses the hours and the measures that were in place at the time the courts were closed because Sewell Park pickleball courts opened. It does not mean that that has to be the proposed hours or measures, but I figured council needed some place to start from, and so that is where we are beginning tonight. I don't feel the need for your benefit to recite what those hours are. You struggled over them for a long time months ago, but I think that's really all I have, unless the city attorney wants to add anything to what I've said.
I think that's a good summary of it. We're available for questions as they come up.
Let me ask a question, and it could be for now or later, whatever you think is appropriate for either one of you. Can you clarify the role of the Parks and Rec Commission in relation to the council? Because we've seen several things go past.
Sure.
And it'd be nice to be on the same page there.
So the Parks and Recreation Commission, like all city commissions and boards, is advisory to the city council. The code has tasked the Parks and Recreation Commission with setting the hours for park facilities, but ultimately it is for you to approve because they are advisory to you.
Agreed. All commission decisions in the end, either directly or on appeal, come to the council.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
I have a couple. I won't go into whether or not the code actually says that I mean, because that's a pretty clear code that the Park and Recs determines the hours. And for instance, in Planning Commission, it says the Planning Commission determines hours, but can be appealed or overruled by the City Council. So there is a direct and absolute connection between the Planning Commission and the ability of the City Council to overrule, but that does not exist on the Planning Commission. But I mean, on the Park and Recs Commission, but that's not actually, so that's just one point I would make. But the second question is, okay, so the pickleball courts have had 3 times, 3 hours and days in their history. The first was open, dawn to dusk, 7 days a week. The second was based on an MOU 2 to 3 years ago that was, hammered out, that was for, I think, 3 years or whatever it was. I'm not exactly sure because it predates me, that it would be all days but the hours would be 8:30 to 11:30, and winter would be 2 to 5, and summer would be 2:30 to 5:30. Then at the time that the pickleball courts were closing, that is a stopgap measure between closing the courts and opening the sole courts, it became extremely restricted, which was 2 days you couldn't play at all. Sunday you could play for 3 hours. You had to use owl paddles. And so what it seems to me is that we have taken the most restrictive period ever and the shortest and made it the baseline from where we start. And I found that probably caused a little bit of confusion amongst the community that was the chosen time, because that was just a stopgap measure until the sole park courts opened. So I just want to also make clear that there were 3 time frames that we could have chosen from, and we did not. We chose the most restrictive. And then I will point out, so I was wondering why that was.
Sure, I can answer that question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I understand what you're speaking to, and those are all true things you've said. But for me, this is something that has to be decided by council, and that's why we're here for this special meeting. I agree with having a special meeting to make this determination. That is my recommendation. As your city manager, I'm just going from the last direction that was provided, and it wasn't really for any other reason than that. This is the last direction provided. I understand what you're saying, that it is also the most restrictive, but it was the last direction provided. It's also the only direction provided to me during my tenure as city manager.
Fair enough. And then I have one last question for the city attorney. Hitherto, when those 2 reductions in time were made, they never went to the Park and Recs department. So there was no recommendation for any of those from the Park and Recs department. So I just want to point out that as well, that, there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot of processes that haven't been followed, that have been followed, that we don't understand. So I just want to sort of point out where those are and why did it never go to the Park and Recs, because their only recommendation that they've made about pickleball was that the courts stay open, you build a wall, and you use blue paddles. So that was the last recommendation from the Park and Recs Commission that never was formally either adopted or rejected from this council. So it's, once again, more confusion. But let's get on. Those are my questions, really, is why didn't it? Why haven't we ever done that?
In summary, prior councils chose, for reasons that worked at the time and are lawful, to not have the Parks and Rec Commission advise on the settlement of a lawsuit threat, which was the deal from 2020 through 2024. That was the city council settling a lawsuit threat by agreeing to limitations on hours. That is, of course, now expired. That expired at the beginning of this year. The other adjustment in hours, the council acted on their own, because in the end, it's up to the council. And so tonight, it's up to the council.
If I can respond to Ms. Rule, just to say, I'm not taking the hours as presented as anything special or in more concrete. I was hearing the city manager say, here's a place from which to at least start from, but not fixed in any way.
Yeah, I actually heard the same thing. But to say something is, to make something, to articulate something is to make it more real than anything else. So that is my only point.
Understood. Any other questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Whitman.
I just want to clarify that if the Parks and Rec Commission is unable to act, the city council sits in its place.
That's my opinion, yes.
And I was asking the city attorney as well, but and that would be applicable as to any of our commissions, that if we have a commission that's set up to handle particular issues and for any reason they're unable to act, it remains the authority of the city council to act in their stead.
In the end, the city council has the power. The city council is the elected entity. There's some asterisks on planning commission regarding the interaction with our code and state law, but we're not talking about the planning commission tonight. But in general, if the commission can't act, the council can act, and it's asserting the authority of the city.
Anything more, Mr.
That's it.
Whitman? And then just to clarify one more time, just so I'm clear, the Parks and Rec Commission is meeting in 2025. They could come up with hours for any park. It would, tell me if I'm correct. It would not come to this body, although a council person could bring it up and the council could discuss it. Is that correct?
It depends.
Okay.
According to your code, they have the ability to set the hours for park
Mhm.
facilities. Park facilities are also somewhere else in the code defined actually to include the pickleball court.
Mm-hmm.
Because the code says that they have the ability to set the hours, arguably one could say that if they make a recommendation, that recommendation stands. But ultimately, it is a recommendation because in their powers, the first statement is that they're advisory to you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also other language in the code that allows anybody who's unhappy with the decision, whether a council member or any other person, to appeal any decision at the staff or commission level up to the council. So in the end, it can come to council.
Which we've seen recently.
Right. We've seen
Yes.
that in other
Mhm.
contexts.
Mm-hmm.
So just a quick clarifying. So even I have only seen that in the planning commission context. So that is also the case for the other commissions.
Correct. And that's
Okay.
in Chapter 4 of Title 1 appeals.
Great, thank
We
you.
most often see Section 1-4.05, which is a council appeal, but the same language earlier in the same section allows anybody else to appeal. And again, planning commission tends to have its own rules because
Yeah.
zoning is something different.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
just for clarification, because this seems like maybe it's a hole or there's, inconsistencies in the way that our ordinances read. And I'll note for the record that we may have the perfect clerk to help us go through our ordinances and try to, get everything resolved. I'm talking about Steve Quillisi.
Mm-hmm.
He has performed that function for the Planning Commission for years in terms of saying, hey, this provision is inconsistent with this. But the point I wanted to make is that it seems to be a unique situation that the Parks and Rec can set an hours of use and it can be implemented immediately, but that it would then be subject to appeal to the, or is that, am I
I'm-
incorrect in that?
So I'm going to let the city attorney jump in. I am arguing that they can do that, but this is the problem with the code. Okay, it's a little unclear, and if you don't like one provision, sometimes you can go find another provision that contradicts what you just found.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. City Attorney?
Yeah, in total, the code is 500 pages written over 100 years. So it's not all consistent. I'm not giving up anything that we don't already know.
Right.
Every line in the code is not consistent with every other line in the code. There is sufficient support, though, for me to give you my advice as your city attorney that all decisions are appealable to the council. There is code language that would support the Parks and Rec Commission making an hours decision, which staff would then implement, but immediately on appeal to the council. There's other language that could support the manager deciding in this kind of a context to take that as a recommendation and not implement it until the council has acted. Again, all roads lead to the council.
The Parks and Rec manager in that context that you just said? Or you mean the city manager?
City manager.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then ultimately for what we're doing tonight, we're the board that has authority to
Yes,
make a decision about hours.
correct. And any other aspect of the pickleball subject.
Such as sound mitigation, et cetera.
Correct. And one of the key options is already noted, but worth repeating, is the council could adopt tonight, if desired, an interim set of rules, and then task the Parks and Rec Commission with coming up with a recommendation to come back to council for further discussion for a more permanent set of rules.
Mm.
In other words, your decision tonight doesn't need to be the end of this discussion.
Mhm.
Not that we need more special meetings on pickleball, but this isn't the be-all, end-all.
Yes.
The council can absolutely have the Parks and Rec Commission study this matter in detail and then come back to council in the future once we have a commission seated.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
I just want clarification because I think I've read so much stuff the last few days. Did I read somewhere where it said that the pickleball courts at City Hall are not considered a park, and that's why
Well,
there was questions?
that was our original opinion. However, we have since found language in the code that actually defines what park facilities are, and included that it would be a court.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So it's a park.
It also says pickleball courts at Libby Park and a big, bold city sign right there, just as an FYI. More inconsistency, whatever.
Another project. Long term, we could make the code all match, but that's a much larger project.
In our free time.
Right.
Wonderful. So we are going to open it up to public comments, and I have the tiniest preamble, which is I was thinking about this for the past couple of days. What I'm hoping we could do is talk about what is in front of us today, which is we have a Measure O that was passed, and we have what's in front of us. So I'm hoping that, obviously you can say whatever you like, but what I'm thinking is it would be easy to want to rehash all of the conversations we have had in the past, but that's not what we're here to do today. So to talk about the sound testing, et cetera, is not what's on our plate. Okay, first off, we have Brian Akins, then Randy Roth, and then Allegra Roth.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, City Attorney. My name is Brian Akins. I'm a 10-plus year commissioner with the City of Ojai's Historic Preservation Commission. 6.5 years as those as chair and 2 years as a vice chair. I've been to every meeting that has discussed pickleball. That meant a lot of cold nights over at Libby Bowl. Really cold. I'm not here tonight to express an opinion, just to share a few facts and insight of these landmark Smith-Hobson grounds. So, sorry, Mayor, but I'm going to go back 100 years. A brief history towards the grounds becoming a city landmark. 1926, the conversion of the outside of the Hobson House to Spanish-style and construction of the guest house is completed. 1928, Grace and Fred Smith, in case you're wondering who the Smith-Hobson, permanently moved into the guest house at the Hobson. 1968, Grace Hobson dies. 1973, Fred Smith and his daughters, Barbara and Helen Margaret Smith, donate the Hobson estate to the city of Ojai. 1976, the Ojai City Hall moves in. 1981, Fred Smith passes away. 2017, Ojai City Council approves a resolution designating the Smith-Hobson estate as historical landmarks. And when we're talking about landmarks, we talk about character defining features. So also in that same report, it concludes with, it should be noted that at the completion of the Smith-Hobson estate in 1926, it consisted of the main house, guest house, garage with apartment, horse barn, small cabin, tennis court, trellis picnic area, outdoor dance floor, miniature golf course, and extensive gardens. So just for history, that tennis court has been around for about 96, 98 years. Not in the best of shape. In the 10 years that I've walked those grounds, I've walked the area over there when it was dangerous to walk in the daylight. Tim Kraut called me about 3 or 4 years ago, said, hey, we want to repurpose. Repurpose is a great word that we love in HBC. The tennis courts to a pickleball court. I said, okay, I'll hop in my car and I'll drive there. And the next thing I did was I Googled pickleball because I had no idea what it was. Mm-hmm. I drove up. I also asked Tim Kraut, have you ever walked those asphalt grounds? Because to walk them in the daylight is dangerous. And so he gave me the different things. He told me what their plans were. I took it back to the Historic Preservation Commission to tell them about it and to see whether they would approve just in taking that concept forward, and they did. Again, repurposing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akins. Randy Roth, Allegra Roth, and then Renee Roth. Triple Roths.
I'm Randy Roth, a Ojai resident and an enthusiastic but not very talented pickleball player. First of all, I'd like to welcome Kim and Andy to the City Council. I am personally grateful to both of you for the service. Anybody who's willing to take on the burden of public service deserves our gratitude. Thanks to you both. I want to make a few observations. First, I believe in the rule of law and the value of democracy. You might ask what practical impact these beliefs have on my life, and here would be my response. In the most recent presidential election, the candidate I voted for did not win. Nonetheless, on January 20th, I will accept the fact that the man who won the most votes, and not my preferred candidate, will be my president. I respect the will of my fellow citizens at the national level. I ask that the citizens and public officials of Ojai respect the will of the majority who voted in favor of Measure O. My second point is that the words of Measure O are clear and unambiguous. Quote, City Hall pickleball courts shall be and remain open to the public year-round without any city permit or other city permission required, unquote. Given the strength and clarity of these words, the pickleball community would be justified if we chose to play at any time with any equipment with no limitations. But because we are not unsympathetic to the sensibilities of our neighbors, of our own free will, we are willing to impose upon ourselves some limitations of schedule and paddle usage. As I said, we will impose these constraints upon ourselves not because the city has the right to regulate us, but because we want to be respectful of our fellow citizens. Ojai has some important issues that deserve the time and attention of our elected officials. The pickleball issue is settled. The people have made their will known.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. You already know what I'm going to say. So, yeah, please, just so we can get through it, because what we want to do is not have it where people feel uncomfortable to talk here. And so let's just all respect each other. We're all neighbors, right? So Allegra Roth, Renee Roth, and then Bill Miley.
Hi, my name is Allegra Roth. That's a hard act to follow. I'm the daughter of Renee Roth and Randy Roth. You might not know them. They kind of stay out of local politics. Pretty, behind the scenes. I grew up in Ojai. I went to San Antonio School. I went to Matilaha. And I'm back here today to speak in front of you about pickleball. Never thought I'd be here. I studied community development at UC Davis. I studied public policy at UC Berkeley. And there's a lot of overlap here with pickleball and everything I studied. And what I think of right now, when I think about the resource that the city has right now with these pickleball courts, it's pretty impressive. Cities throughout the state, cities throughout the country are writing grants, begging the federal government, begging the state government for resources to create what you have right here. And what a privilege it is to have this resource available to the public. And I think it's a really great opportunity right now for the city to say, we want to create hours that are accessible to working class families. People that work 9 to 5, they want to play on the weekends. That's kind of just like how working class America is. And Ojai has the opportunity to make this space accessible for those folks. I could talk more about how much I love pickleball, but I don't think that's necessary. A lot of people are here to say that. And I'll just close by saying I think one of the greatest shows of leadership is to delegate and to know when your job is done. And it does seem like this ballot proposition is clear on what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for. And so I think, respecting the vote of the people, what a privilege it is to do that. And I urge you to do that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roth. Just do the quiet ones. That's great. So Renee Roth, Bill Miley, and then Tim Krut.
Okay. Good evening, council. I remember being here and saying, please keep the pickleball courts open on weekends, because my family, when they come to town, and my daughter is here with her boyfriend who's visiting, what's the first thing they want to do? Let's go play pickleball, Dad. Where can we play? When can we play? I was here begging for those courts to stay open so that we could have weekend play. Now, I just want you to know, I was out playing pickleball today for the first time in 9 months. I had knee surgery. I haven't been able to play. I was thrilled to be able to play with my family today. And we all took the day off. We really didn't plan on having to be here to talk about pickleball for this meeting tonight. This was the last thing we really wanted to have to do, to tell you the honest to God truth. But we're here because there are people who have continued to interject into public policy of our council limitations and restrictions that go above and beyond the reasonable effort of people to try to make concessions and get along. That's why we're here today. Unfortunately, that's why we're here. I really wish we could have been able to sit down, get along, and make some decisions, but there were people who did not want to make any concessions whatsoever. They wanted us gone from the courts. Okay, so we're here today. We have many more options. I am not sure what the hours of play should be and what the limitations should be. I really hope you will support keeping the courts here in the center of town for children and families to come and play on Saturdays and Sundays. I think that's really important for our families to know they can bike ride into town. They don't have to go to Casitas or Soul Park. This is a community resource on community grounds, with the city hall being the center of our community. It's a great resource, and I hope you can continue to make that possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roth. Bill Miley, Tim Kraut, and then Linda Wilson.
Hello.
Hello.
My family has lived in Ojai City since 1968. I read the letter from the attorney the pickleball players hired to draft the initiative, and also who they retained to write a letter that's on the website about this meeting. What the hired attorney missed in the letter was the original concern about play on the old Smith-Hobson tennis court, sounds that become noises when it reaches others beyond the pickleball play area. Quick history. Right after the initial play, it's about 4 years ago, noise complaints started coming to the city. Layman efforts were made by the city to build a rock wall with a screen on top and then a 3-foot wall along South Ventura Street, a screen above the 3-foot wall. Noise complaints continued over 4 years. Then the council agreed to work with the county to build 5 new courts at Soul Park, which we now have. Interesting, even the city administration touts the health benefits of playing pickleball, even to the extent it helps with depression. They don't mention the injuries. That's not the issue, folks. The issue is sound, which becomes noise when it enters the property up to 500 feet away. Repetitive, interrupting, disturbing, maddening, pop, 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 voices of players, waiters, and watchers, resulting in potential mental health issues, including depression. Owl paddles brought some less intensive pops. The hardball sounds continue. The voices can be a significant part of the noise intrusion. How will the rules for paddles and balls be enforced? They can't with the rules that exist now. No one controls these courts daily and hourly. Owl paddles, how are they enforced? Softballs to play with, how will they be enforced? Loud voices, how will they be enforced? So they're not loud. The traveling sounds and noises are the issues. It's a noise that pickleball play creates. That's the issue. Residents that live 100, 200, 300 plus feet away will still be intruded upon. Pop, 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 voice, voice, voice. Likely, there will be digital decibel meters used to record play sounds in the future by those of us who believe in fairness, truthfulness, and right over wrong. Noise ordinances will come into play. This is not over by a long time.
Thank you, Mr. Miley. Tim Kraut, Linda Wilson, and then Brenda Kraut.
Good evening, council, staff, Mr. Mayor. So my question tonight is, why are we here? The people have spoken. I don't think that if we had lost, we'd be having this meeting. I don't think the opponents would be giving us any concessions had we lost. And that's the truth. So why are we here? You're discounting the citizens of Ojai, the ones that passed this measure, the ones that put you, Andy, in that position, and that's not respecting the vote of the people. This council, the past council, when Betsy and Susan was on it, they had a chance at that time to negotiate. We could have negotiated a deal with the homeowners. Actually, we never had a chance to. We were never included in any negotiations at all. It always came from, they had hired an attorney, the attorney wanted this, that, and another thing. The city bent over backwards and put all those mitigation measures in. When they got done, I asked Bill Wyrick, I said, okay, Bill, all these things are in now. What happens now? He said, we've done everything that the neighbors had asked for. Everything. They never came to us and asked us what we wanted. So the council voted then to shut it down. So we, the public, the citizens, got that initiative on the ballot. And then the public voted for it. It's not about me. It's about the citizens in Ojai. And they're telling you right now, we want this. We want it to stay. But yet the neighbors are saying, wait a minute, let's back up. We want concessions. They never would have given us one concession. And we wouldn't be here had we lost. We would have taken our ball and gone elsewhere. So tonight I want to close with, Andy, you won the election fair and square. This is like Michelle telling you how to set the agenda. You see what I'm feeling like?
Mm-hmm.
You won the election. You're the mayor. But yet Michelle's going to come in and set the agenda. That's not right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kraut. Remember what we talked about. Linda Wilson, Brenda Kraut, and Jessica McCrae.
Good evening. My name is Linda Wilson, and my husband and I have been residents here in Ojai since 1981. I honestly can't wrap my head around what's happening here. 2 or 3 years ago, $13,000 was paid for a professional sound study. The Park and Rec Commission made the recommendations, and what did they say? Exactly what the people just had to force through by an initiative this month. Just think how crazy this moment is. Your own constituents had to organize, gather signatures, mount an entire initiative campaign to make you do what your own experts recommended years ago. It is time to implement these very studies you commissioned and then ignored. The sheer waste of it all is staggering. The waste of the taxpayers' money on ignored studies, the waste of countless hours, the citizens' time, energy to achieve what your experts already told you to do. And now, incredibly, this is still somehow before you tonight. As if a voter mandate that perfectly mirrors your own expert recommendation needs what exactly? More decisions, more delay, more hoops to jump through. The people, not just a few loud voices, the majority of the voters, have legally mandated this action. It's time to stop bending to the wishes of a few over the clear legal directive of the many. I find myself standing here, frankly astonished, having to defend a voter initiative that does nothing more than implement the very recommendation you had sitting on your desk for years. I urge you, finally, please, to listen both to your own experts and their constituents. Stop this and implement the initiative without further delay. The people have worked very hard to make this happen. The time is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Brenda Kraut, then Jessica McCrae, then Ron McCrae.
I've kind of the same opinion as Linda, that I just can't believe that I'm standing here again. And I mean, I really kind of take exception to the manager's explanation of why his staff report contained the recommended hours that it did. Because I know all of you received the email from the opponents demanding that you do something, even though they did lose the election, which seems to be lost in this whole conversation, that you implement these hours. The hours that were in the staff report was almost a mirrored reflection of what they were requesting. So we're still, I feel like this council, this staff, is still listening to the opponents. They are acting like the opponents won this election. And like had been pointed out before me, is that it wasn't just a handful of people who put that ballot on the election, that measure on the ballot. We got over 1,100 signatures from the citizens in Ojai to put that measure on the ballot. And then it was passed. The margin of which it is passed has no relevance here. It doesn't matter if it was one vote. Just like we pointed out with the mayor, it does not matter. So I still feel like that we are not being listened to. And I'm sure all of you have seen this letter from the attorney. I mean, it's been mentioned. I mean, he outlines the requirements and the content of that measure very clearly. And in fact, there's one paragraph. It says, to the extent the city is considering giving in to the demands of Measure O's opponents, especially with regard to limiting the hours and days during which the City Hall pickleball courts may be used, or the types of paddles and balls that may be used, the addition of such new and different terms would amount to a permit or permission requirement, would not be consistent with or further the purpose of Measure O, would not be consistent with Measure O's liberal construction requirement, and would violate Measure O's amendment provisions. So that's clear. I mean, you have, maybe, like Randy said, maybe we would be willing to make some kind of concessions, but if we do, it's concessions on our part. In fact, if everyone has forgotten here, we're the winners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kraut. Jessica McCrae, Ron McCrae, and then Denise, it's Keon Skippy.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jessica McCrae. Welcome to our new mayor and council member.
Thank you.
I'm here to speak on the enforcement of the commitments that are stated in the ordinance on sound mitigation. Imagine being sick with the flu and trying to sleep in your home, but you can't because of pickleball. Imagine trying to relax and read a book, but you can't because of pickleball. Imagine leaving your house and getting sent into fight or flight mode because of the terrifying screams coming from the pickleball players. True story, happened to me. Imagine what that does to a person's nervous system. These are these people's homes. This isn't a game. The ordinance states in section B, purpose and intent of the ordinance. Item 7, our local community of pickleball players is committed to being respectful and responsive to the concerns of others, including neighbors who reside near the City Hall pickleball courts. Item 8, our local community of pickleball players will apply state-of-the-art technology to mitigate sound and other potential adverse impacts from the playing of pickleball at the City Hall pickleball courts. And in section D, City Hall pickleball courts mitigation commitment.
Those who use the City Hall pickleball courts shall commit to making reasonable efforts to adopt state-of-the-art technology to mitigate sound and other potential adverse impacts from the playing of pickleball at the City Hall pickleball courts. The most effective sound mitigation technology at this time is the owl paddles and gamma librarian foam pickleballs. Per the ordinance, this equipment should be mandated in order to play on the City Hall courts. There should also be some sort of enforcement of this technology by way of fine or removal of player if they violate the ordinance. In addition to this equipment, those guttural screams while playing shall be removed from play. Just not making those alarming noises is the ultimate state of the art. Technology. The ordinance should not.
Let me interrupt for 1 second. Gang, audience, please. Really, what we want to have here is a place where everybody gets to come and talk. And so, if anybody feels uncomfortable coming here, they won't come here anymore, and we don't get to have a government. So, I want to ask one more time, please, to give respect to the person who's speaking. Thank you. Please continue.
The ordinance should not be ignored, and these measures should be enacted and enforced. In addition, I have previously attended a council meeting and pointedly asked the question if the hours would remain the same as they were prior to the court closing. I was told by this council that that was the case. They would stay the same. I believe the statement released on December 11th was done without authority or in error. Changes to play must be voted on by either the city council or the citizens of Ojai, per the ordinance section E, amendment and repeal. I think I would just like the ordinance that was written to be respected.
Thank you, Ms. McCrae. Ron McCrae, Denise Skippy, and then Lori Johnson.
Yeah, nobody here is trying to stop the pickleball playing. That's not the issue, of course. It started 4 years ago when the city council said, "Oh, let's just put a pickleball court right over here." Johnny Johnson and Randy, they had no idea what that was or how loud it was. Susan would ask the question, "Is it loud?" They said no. Tim said no. So the people on the south side of the courts there, the neighbors on there, had a petition. It was started at 7 o'clock in the morning and went all day. You could not live there. It was impossible. So we tried to sue them, but we were not listening to the people across the street. We had no idea. It was just South people. And we got the new hours. And then after that new hours were set, then the people across the street on the east side, the whole group of them wanted to start it again. They had nothing to do. I got what I wanted on there, of the hours that worked. They wanted it to stop also. So that's what happens. But you can't live with that noise. They tried everything they can to soften it, make it a little better. But no, you can't live there. How would you? There was 2,000 people that voted to not be there. And there was 2,000 people that said, yes, let's have it over there in their neighborhood. Well, who cares? I don't care. It's not going to be by me. Those 2,000 people that voted for those things, would you like it across the street from your house? That's the issue. That's all we're asking. We're not going to try to overturn the election. No, we lost by a few points. And there was a mistake because we didn't have a rebuttal on there. If we would have had the council could have got us a rebuttal to say something against on the election ballot, we would have won hands down. We didn't know what they were talking about. So, but all I can say, it's not about having the pickleball player. They got to have a good time. We're all for that. It's about the neighbors, the people that live across there. I've been there for 30 years. It's been a really quiet place down there. The people across the street, they're getting ill about what's going to happen. If they had that back again, like they say it on the newspaper, 7 days a week, all day long. I mean, absolutely no one could even live there. I guarantee it. There's no enforcement about. I go over there a lot of time and say, listen, it's closed. Oh, we didn't know that. How are you going to enforce them anyway? It's not about pickleball. It's about the neighbors. Don't they even care about the neighbors?
Thank you, Mr. McCrae. Denise Keown Skippy, Lori Johnson, and Lisa Laramendi. Hi.
Hello. Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Denise Cowan, but only my mother calls me that.
Okay.
I'm known as Skippy. Looking at your agenda, I feel like you are accepting the hours, equipment, and days for pickleball at City Hall, which were set by 3 neighbors and 1 property owner. But we won the measure. I feel the Ojai Valley Pickleball Association needs to set these according to the sound study that the city paid for. After all, we did win. Let me remind the mayor and council members, you are here for the residents of Ojai, the majority who voted yes for Measure O. Please don't make us sue you to follow the law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lori Johnson, Lisa Laramendi, and Sandra Hansen.
Repeat. Thank you. The people voted yes, a city park with pickleball play. Very disappointing for working folks over the last 4 years. We've not been able to play with the 8 to 5 work schedule. Then it got restricted even more, and there's no weekend play, or very, very little weekend play. It was designed for a special group, not the general public, and that's over the last 4 years. We did win the ballot to open it up. Summer heat can be a problem with the part-time hours, also the 2:30 to 5, especially for the elderly group, which is a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us. Please go with the majority vote, park hours, dawn to dusk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lisa Laramendi, Sandra Hansen, and then Polly Hawkins.
Hi, I'm Lisa Laramendi. I play pickleball and I love it. I opened the paper up the other day and saw the dawn to dusk, and I went, oh my God, we've got to compromise this. And so then I found out that the people against Measure O really aren't willing to compromise. The pickleball players have compromised all along with limited play, balls, hours, and we won the measure. So I think we should be the ones that determine the hours that we play, and we want to be reasonable and respect the neighbors, but closing the courts on the weekend leaves families out, and I play with my family who all works. So we won the measure. Please keep us open. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laramendi. Sandra Hansen, Polly Hawkins, and Joe Crocker.
Hello, I'm Sandra Hansen. I've been a resident of Ojai since 1961. Cool. Yes, I'm that old. I'm missing the poetry reading at the library tonight to speak to you once again. I've been doing this for, I don't know, it seems like years and years and years on this pickleball thing. And, a lot of people put in a great deal of work, as you all know, into getting the measure on the ballot, and the ballot passed. And so it seems like a no-brainer. There's a lot of discussion. I'm a retired school teacher, and there's a lot of discussion about people losing faith in democracy and that it's crumbling and it's no longer working. Well, I think maybe it's because of things like this. The ballot passed. We have no limitations. It should be implemented in the way that it was written. I think the dawn to dusk, it's a park. All the parks are open dawn to dusk. I don't know why that would be any different for the city courts. I also feel that, I hear the neighbors and have concern for them as well. There's construction going on around me, and it's dawn to dusk every day of the week, and it never ends. There's tractors and sawing and hammering and pneumatics and stuff, and it's constant, and it takes years and years to build a house now, it seems. And I also feel like the courts at Soul Park are beautiful. They turned out lovely. The courts at Lake Casitas are even more beautiful with the scenery. So I don't think it's going to be as impacted as it has been in the past, because there are now other places to play. So I think that some of the concern about what was happening before, all of those people that can now play in all these other courts aren't going to be all in that one area, although we do love our beautiful pickleball courts here at the City Hall. They're the best in the nation, and I hope that the council can follow the recommendations of the measure as it was written. So.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Polly Hawkins, Joe Crocker, and Leonard Clafe.
Hi, I'm Polly Hawkins, and my husband and I have owned property here for about 8 years. And we found the pickleball courts here, and it is one of the most loveliest, most respectful group of people. You may have noticed that not all of us are old, but a lot of us are. I'm 72, and we're not the Hell's Angel or a biker gang out there. We do enjoy the company, but nobody is yelling. And I want to say one thing. A lot of great things happen out there, but Skippy, who is a former teacher, on Mondays, it's really criminal for it not to be open on Mondays because that's when a lot of school kids are off. And she gets kids to come over and teach them how to play. And then she gets people like me, I'm 72, and I get to play with a little kid. And that's a pretty neat thing, and it doesn't happen often enough. So thank you. And I think elections matter, and we need to prove that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joe Crocker, Leonard Clafe, and Larry Steingold.
Jack.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Not
Jack.
Joe Crocker.
Nope, my fault. Jack,
That
my
might have been
mistake.
more fun, but
Thank you.
That was my wife, and Mr. Mayor, council, and staff.
Thank you.
And we are new to the community, and we found the community that Tim and his wife and Skippy had built around those courts. One of the most welcoming things in this entire Ojai community. And it was a wonderful way to get to know people and get to meet people. And so I just hope that if it's concluded that the mayor and council have the right to set the hours, that there is a sufficient deference paid to the fact that it's a welcoming community there, that the vote was won by passage of the Pickleball Act, and that the number of people who are benefiting by being able to play pickleball far exceed the people who are, and I appreciate that, but you know, there's discomfort for them, but the numbers are overwhelmingly in favor of the pickleball community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I'm using his first name deliberately, so I memorize it. Leonard Clafe, Larry Steingold, and Leslie Clark.
Good evening. I too would welcome Mayor Gilman and Councilmember Mang. Thank you for serving. I voted no on O, and I worked for the people who wanted no on O, but I accept the fact that yes on O won, and we've got to move forward from there. I would like to comment only on one thing that's been said so far by a yes on O person. Tim Kraut talked about how the pickleball people were excluded from all negotiations about the hours. The residents were excluded from any conversation when the pickleball courts were installed. There was no notice. Nobody knew what pickleball was. So if there's unfairness, it's been unfairness in both directions. During the election season, and I don't remember the exact date, but before the vote was final, the city issued a statement saying that if Measure O won, the hours would be the same as they were before they were closed. That was what people were advised. That's what people voted on. Gordy Clausen, who's a big pickleball person, and I bet $1 to a donut, I said that if Measure O passed, the pickleball, and the city tried to limit hours, the pickleball people would sue. And Gordy said, of course not. We wouldn't do that. Of course they would, and they are threatening. And the rudeness which has started with Leslie Rule at the first meetings about pickleball continue with the rudeness of the pickleball adherents at this meeting, and I find it contrary to a democracy, which they're so big on proclaiming. The pickleball initiative said nothing about hours. The letter from the attorney for the pickleball people concedes that the Parks and Rec can set the hours. His argument about the separation of powers and only the Parks and Rec can do it and not the city council is stupid. And as has been said by staff, the city council makes that decision. There is nothing in Measure O that says it has to be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And people were told that it would be limited hours when they voted. That's what we are asking. We are also asking for big signs, whatever hours you choose, so that people know when it's open and when it's not open. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. Mr. Harvey, can you verify, was it publicized on the city's website during the election time, the hours from the prior closed hours?
There was an FAQ. It is still on the website. I believe, and the city attorney might have to help me out with what the FAQ says. Looks like you have it in front of you.
I have it in front of me. There's two documents that speak to that. One is the FAQ. Question 31, who would, and I'm going to quote this to make sure we're not summarizing. Question 31, quote, question, who would decide the days and hours of playing time? Would they be able to 24/7? Could they install lights for nighttime play? Answer, if the initiative passes, the city anticipates the City Hall pickleball court will be open the same hours as the city's other parks. Any hours limits below the current limited hours would only be possible with voter approval. Lights could only be installed at the City Hall campus if approved by the City Council. And the impartial analysis I wrote based on the initiative's text, which was in the voter packet, states, quoting, and also, quote, if the initiative passes, the city expects the City Hall pickleball court will be open the same hours as the city's other parks. Lights could only be installed at the City Hall pickleball courts if approved by the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Larry Steingold, Leslie Clark, and Casey Abbott.
All right. Good morning. Good evening. I heard about the time issues prior to the election, so this shouldn't have been a surprise. How it got here should have been vetted more carefully, quite honestly. And even with the threat of a lawsuit, it can go back on the ballot again in November. So, push comes to shove, it can go both ways. The blame the Park and Rec Commission that hasn't been constituted for a year and a half intentionally is kind of self-serving. The fact to blame the Park and Rec manager is even worse, because somebody was giving him direction or he was doing it on his own. So, where you go with this, I would table it, create the Park and Recs Commission, change the ordinances to reflect what you want, to limit the times, not make it a park, and do it that way. Everybody's talking about voting, and that's great. Well, you have the vote, table it, create the Park and Recs Commission, change the ordinances so that you can control the times and call it a day. And start with that.
Thank you, Mr. Steingold. Leslie Clark, Casey Abbott, and Jeffrey Starkweather.
Hello, my name is Leslie Clark. I'm fourth generation Ojai resident. And I'm really sorry to be here once again to revisit this issue that has occupied so much time and cost so much money. You have a lot of other very important civic issues to deal with. The pickleball supporters have been consistently polite and accommodating and honest. It may have won us an election, but it got us nowhere with the city council. So I'm going to try another tack. This is no longer about pickleball. It's about politics and our democracy. Measure O did not pass because 2,129 people care about pickleball. It passed because the voters were tired of the way the city council was conducting business. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I do know what the perception was. Many voters believed that the city council felt it was above the law and did not listen to its constituents. The pickleball community are not politically connected, as are the opponents. That is obvious from their expensive literature that stated that all past, present, and future public officials were opposed to Measure O, with the exception of one. But even with that kind of political support, the voters spoke and Measure O was passed. When a candidate wins by only 23 votes, he or she still wins. They do not share the office with the person that received 23 less votes. The loser has no say. So why are they still being heard? It's time for the opponents to gracefully accept defeat and withdraw. The newspaper published that the courts would be open the same hours as other public parks in the city, which seems only sensible. Now you're going back on that public statement, just as you did when you gave us permission to be there in the first place. Are you going to show the voters that what they say does not matter? Are you going to punish working people and children who go to school by not allowing them to use this public park on weekends? Please do not rescind what was published in the paper, and please show the voters who passed this measure that their vote means something.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Casey Abbott and Jeffrey Starkweather.
Good evening, Casey Abbott, Ojai resident. I never even heard of pickleball until I came to Ojai. Later on, it was in the national news that there were drone wars going on in other cities, documenting that tennis courts were not being used and they could be converted to pickleball courts. Lawsuits have been flying, lots of money going into it. I don't really care. You want to play pickleball? Fantastic. But I went to see it myself. A couple of guys from Ventura came up and probably gave Jimmy Connors and Eli Nastasi lessons in swear words. He probably gave sailors with Tourette's syndrome lessons in swear words. They were horrible. Their screams were indeed blood-curdling, and they were frightening. I'm not saying that the Ojai Pickleball Association, was that the right name? That they are Hell's Angels. But those guys that came up here to use these courts right out here, I'd rather hang out with the Hell's Angels than with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Jeffrey Starkweather, Starchild, and Dale Hanson.
Good evening. I hadn't planned to speak till I saw Brad Hurt's letter, who had been my attorney, actually, at one point. I highly respect him. He's one of the best election lawyers in the state. And I think given what we've experienced here with so many measures passed that ended up having legal issues, I think we should go in, bend over backwards, number one, to avoid that issue. I went door to door, actually campaigning for the mayor. I did not take a position on pickleball. I've got friends on both sides of this issue. I have only played on these courts once, and I found the players were older and less aggressive than I experienced at the club and when they first opened Stowe Park. The louder, more aggressive male players don't generally play here. At least that was my experience. I think the key here, there's a second caution, because if you're looking at being sued, 4 of you came out publicly and took a position. So I think you should need to be very careful about what you do, given that. I think we're at the stage of being reasonable. What is a reasonable approach that would accommodate pickleball and do the best to maybe limit the hours? I'd love someone to explain it to me, why logically you'd have it on Thursday through Friday and Sunday, but not on Saturday and Monday. I just don't understand that from any kind of public policy. So I hope you'd be reasonable. And I think it probably would be unreasonable just to have it dawn to dusk, actually. So I think there could be some limits on hours, but I think it's reasonable that people should be able to play there every day. And I think, I don't know if you can regulate it, but I certainly encourage the softer paddles and the softer balls, and maybe more sound barriers could be erected even, since the voters voted for it. I would add one other thing when I talked about what's in the frequently asked questions, and that's no voter reads any of that stuff. No voter. No voter reads the measure. They take general impressions and they talk to their neighbors. So if you're trying to be like a lawyer and say, oh God, it said it here, and therefore they thought that was true. That's just not true. I can tell you, I went door to door in this campaign, and nobody mentioned anything like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Starkweather. Starchild and then Dale Hanson.
I read it. I read the Ojai Pickleball Act. I read the attorney's impartial analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to say, we're here today. We're not at the Ojai Tent Town meeting that was scheduled in this building for tonight. That's rescheduled for Thursday. I'm going to miss it. I have something else going on. We're not at the Help of Ojai event tonight. We're here talking about pickleball. Mr. Summers told you that all roads lead to city council. He's wrong. In Ojai government, all roads lead to the people. And the people spoke. They may have read the impartial city attorney analysis. Mr. Summers read it. I'll read it again. If the initiative passes, the city expects the City Hall pickleball court would be open the same hours as the city's other parks. That's what the voters saw. That's what the voters knew. And that's what they voted for. Now Mr. Summers tells you this impartial analysis was wrong. That really, it's up to you to decide what the hours would be, that his expectation that the City Hall courts would be open from dawn to dusk was not correct. But what I want you to think is, this is an emergency. It's not an emergency. It's not a crisis. Dawn to dusk is only from 7:30 to 5. It's winter time. There are some crises here in Ojai. There's a crisis of leadership in our government. There's a crisis of lack of transparency, lack of affordable housing. There's a tent town outside and a cabin village that needs to be built. There are unsafe streets. Our town might go up in smoke in a fire. These are all reasons to have a special council meeting. Not this. Reconstitute the Park and Rec Commission and let them decide on what hours the park should be open. Mr. City Attorney said that you're the ones who decide, not the Park and Recs Commission. But he also said the Parks and Rec Commission couldn't have solved or got in front of the gymnastics crisis. I stopped taking his word on this issue, and I think you should too. It's time to table this discussion and leave it to that commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Starchild. Dale Hanson.
So here we are. I'm Dale Hanson. I live in the city of Ojai. And for all those folks that are talking about how they won the election, it's true. They won by 23 votes. There were over 2,000 people in this city that voted in favor of no. And I do agree with what Jeffrey Starkweather said, that most people do not read it. Thank you, Fairchild, for reading it. But most people do not. Many people come to me and ask me how to vote because they're not going to read those measures and initiatives. But at any rate, I do hope, are you the new Park and Rec Commissioner or Director? Yes, Manager, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do hope that you consider all of us who've endured with this noise, and it truly is noise. For some people who say that Ron can't hear it, they're incorrect. He can hear it. You can walk over there by his house and you can hear it, and you have no rest when that's going on. The other thing that I want to say is that for someone who compared your vote with Stephanie's vote, there's no comparison. You won by a landslide. That's not how the Measure O won. It won by 23 votes. Am I not correct?
Michelle is the name.
Michelle, thank you. Yeah, I knew I said it wrong.
I think they were thinking of the former election, not this one.
Well, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I want to say, I mean, I could go on and on about this, but I've already said it so many times and I won't repeat it, is that all these folks that are up here talking about, you know, that's not a big deal. You have Soul Park. Don't say you can't play on Saturday or Sunday or any other day. The city spent so much money to put in a beautiful facility out there, so you can play, and it's not the only place. And the other thing I would say is that those of you who want it there 24 hours or every day from dawn to dusk, it's not next door to you. And if it was, you wouldn't be voting that way. Please consider the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hampton. Mr. Montgomery, any online?
Mayor, we have no raised hands right now, but let's extend our public comment period for this item to our Zoom participants. Zoom participants, now is the time to raise your hand. And now we do have one raised hand from Brad Hertz.
Thank you.
Brad Hertz, you have the ability to unmute, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good, and hopefully you can see me. My name is Brad Hertz, and I'm the attorney for the official proponent of Measure O, as well as supporters of Measure O. I've specialized in political and election law for the past 36 years and have handled scores of ballot measure matters. I've sued cities for violating the law, and I've represented cities as outside counsel. I'm past president of the California Political Attorneys Association, and I've taught election law and civil procedure at Chapman University Law School. Simply put, Measure O, the Ojai Pickleball Act, is now the law of the land in the city of Ojai. The city is legally obligated to implement the measure, not to undermine it. The only legally proper course of action for the city at this juncture is to open the City Hall pickleball courts from dawn to dusk, beginning this Friday, October 20th. To the extent the city believes Measure O is ambiguous, which we believe it's not, it can seek clarification from the Superior Court. And to the extent Measure O's opponents disagree with the city, they can seek judicial clarification as well. What the city cannot legally do is narrowly interpret the measure as if it were never voted on, disregarding the will of the voters. Doing so will lead to a lawsuit against the city, at the very least for equitable relief to compel compliance with the new law and attorney's fees. Not only would the city have to pay its own attorney's fees, but it would have to pay attorneys to enforce Measure O based on a specific provision. And if the city is unsuccessful in defending its actions, as I am confident it will be, it will likely have to pay the Measure O attorneys under a provision of the California Code of Civil Procedure. Such attorneys' fees can quickly add up, as I'm sure you're aware, and this is definitely a look before you leap situation. Before the ink was even dry on the certification of the election, Measure O's detractors were advocating for it to be ignored or amended. Having lost at the ballot box, the opponents want to go back to the way it was before Measure O was even a thought. When you gamble and lose, you are not exactly in a strong negotiating position. As creative as the city is contemplating being via tonight's proposed resolution, the proposed temporary hours of operation and temporary equipment standards violate the law, plain and simple. I'm confident that the Superior Court and the appellate courts, if necessary, will not take kindly to the city's actions, and the city would regret having undertaken such a knee-jerk reaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hertz.
Mayor, we have no more raised hands.
Thank you. So the public comments are closed. I have one question for Mr. Harvey. Now we'll go to discussion. Is there a plan at all in place to build walls around the court? Does that currently exist?
We do not have a plan currently. We have had some studies. We've had some rough estimates. We don't have a plan that we could go begin construction with immediately. That would be considered a capital improvement project. You'd need to adopt that as part of your annual budget and ask us to implement that.
Thank you. Anybody?
I'll just clarify on that last point. I'll let Mr. Harvey fill in the details, but I did ask him if we were to build a fence that we could potentially hang sound deadening material on the fence, what would the expense of the fence be? And I think you said that a 12-foot fence would be $180,000, I think.
Let me
is
go
what-
back to my, I have a very thumbnail sketch from the Public Works Director. You'll give me a moment. I can see what she told me. Give me a moment. Okay. So I asked her for a very rough estimate for a 10 to 15 foot fence with sound deadening material around the pickleball court. And so we're talking about the entire perimeter. So her preliminary estimate, and this is again just super preliminary, you know, it was around $700,000. She had just built a 140-foot retaining wall that was 8 to 13 feet tall for $350,000. So she's estimating this to be about 360 feet over that, and so that's how she arrived at that number. And then, of course, you need to add the sound deadening material. So, yeah, but that's a very rough estimate. And if you wanted that, we would want to get a professional estimate. Not that she's not professional, but a more detailed one, and bring it back to you.
Thank you.
And that was a recent quote?
Yes, yes. But yes, and then as the city attorney is pointing out, you know, this is a public works project, so it would be bid. We take the lowest responsible bidder.
Anyone?
Yeah, I'm going to start just because my name was on calling this meeting.
Good.
And just to understand what, when the, we received information that was initially saying we were going to have the old hours of play were going to be re-implemented. But then before that information was released, the city manager reconsidered based upon his review of materials and said he thought we had to be implemented at dawn to dusk. I was concerned. I went back and read the Pickleball Act, and I didn't read it to say anything about hours or play or to give the public any indication that they would be adopting a dawn to dusk playtime for pickleball. And so my thought in terms of then the next information that I received was that the Parks and Rec Commission and not the city manager have the authority to set hours of play, and that there, of course, well, I think we thought there was going to be a Parks and Rec Commission and that they could hold a meeting, but we did not, we were not successful in appointing a quorum. So it's us, as we spent some time discussing earlier. And my thought is that the best thing that would happen to this community if we could just agree to reasonable hours of play. I fully expect to honor the result of the vote, which I understand and interpret to be reopen the courts. And I plan to support reopening the courts, but I believe that we have to implement reasonable hours of play, and then hopefully everybody gets along and we can never have a meeting about this again. Yeah.
So,
Yes. Ms. Roll.
yes, thank you. So I have Andy Gilman and I were Brown Act buddies. Do you mind if I move forward, Andy? You want to talk first?
Yeah, let me talk first.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Well, then can I talk first?
Oh, yes, of course you can.
Well, I was just going to put
No, well, you're talking now.
I was going to put a motion on the table, you know, because I think it makes it easier, but we can all talk first if you would prefer that.
I was going to modify slightly, but well, I mean, of course, make a motion. That's completely your right.
Well, I guess I'll speak first and then I'll
Mhm.
make a motion.
Yes.
So I just wanted to kind of speak to some of the comments that were made because I think they're important. I think the idea of family and weekend play is paramount. And the courts here are different than the courts at Seoul. The courts here, families can come, their kids can run around. I've seen it over and over again where two families will come together and you'll have 8 kids or 6 kids and half of them are playing pickleball. Half of the parents are playing pickleball. The other half of kids are running and playing hide and seek. The other parents are talking to each other. That's just not possible at Seoul. It's highly divided and it's surrounded by a parking lot. So when you ask what's the difference between the two, that's the huge difference, is that Seoul doesn't encourage intergenerational family play. And if you take a look at it, you can understand why. There's a bench outside of each court. All the courts are, highly fenced for good reason, because the balls go everywhere. But it's a different kind of feel. There's no oak trees. There's no shade. So I wanted but it's more about the families for me, because I've seen it over and over again on the weekends. And I also have heard over and over again that there's nothing for families to do here together, right? I mean, there isn't a pool. There isn't a bowling alley. Kids don't like to walk, really. You can't play tennis because it takes years for you to get to the point where you can hit the ball over the net. So, it's really true that this is one thing that families can do, which is why it's so important that it be open on the weekends. I understand the noise. I understand all of that. But once again, there are laws. There's a noise ordinance. There's no noise ordinance for things zoned public. But there's still a general noise ordinance. So if you have a noise problem, you have a recourse. The recourse is not to shut down everybody. The recourse is to figure out what the noise is about. No one controls that, really. I did want to talk to Ms. McCrae's comment about the state of art technologies. That would be, we had a sound study done by an acoustic company, professionals, that we spent $13,000 on it. They recommended a sound mitigation wall. I don't remember it being those figures. So we may be looking, so I don't remember it being that kind of money. So maybe it's a different kind of wall. I don't know what it is, but it could also be that money, but
One thing, sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
to consider is that the city always pays prevailing wage
Yeah.
for our projects, which usually adds 30% to the cost that you would normally see.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, and I 100% support that. Absolutely. But there's, so I think that sound mitigation and I think that the pickleball people would be, we'd have to figure out sort of what the mitigation commitment would be. And then I wanted also to talk about, the previous council who gave away the courts and who gave away, so not the previous council, the council before, who basically just said, here's a tennis court, you can have it, play pickleball there. And the complaints started immediately. That council could have revoked what they did, but they did not. So, and I think that that's also really important. They did not do that. And, and the other things that I understand that the neighbors have been offered that have been denied are triple paned windows, that there are, white noise for fountains that were refused. Oh dear.
Mm-hmm.
How is that possible?
Because.
Oh my God.
Well, we can come back to you. Do you need to finish the thought and then we'll come back to you?
I think the final thought is 13 neighbors supported this measure. 13 neighbors that live right in here. So when you say all of the neighbors, you're not including the 13 neighbors that signed on to the initiative. So I just think that's really important. And then, of course, there's much more to say, but we shall come back to me. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could, what I'm thinking about is several things, and for me, it actually seems sort of clear. The voters did decide. It's not our job to determine what they voted on and what they didn't. They voted, right? What they understand is not our business to ask. And it also seems to me that I am understanding that there is some accommodations that the pickleball community is willing to concede. I heard that word loud and clear. I understand that. And so from my perspective, here's what I'm proposing. It is something like a dawn to dusk, because that is simple and clear and reflects our other parts. I have understood that the pickleball community is willing to not play from 12 to 2. I hope that's correct. I hope that's still correct. I've also understood that there's a blue paddle list for which that authorizes quiet paddles, for which they have also agreed to, and that they're conceding to that. And that I would then say that I would ask staff to come up with a clear plan for a sound mitigation wall that we can then look at and vote on, with the expectation that we would be mitigating the sound as much as possible and have very clear signage on hours. And if it's feasible, to lock it when those hours are done, as Soul Park is locked. So that's the motion that I'm proposing.
Could I make a friendly amendment?
Yes.
So this initiative process, and I've been thinking about this, is a very expensive process. So the citizens of Ojai paid for this, and it came out to around $10,000. And so I would like to propose a friendly amendment that the city reimburse the pickleball community for that expense, not for campaign materials, not for anything, because essentially what has occurred is the Ojai Valley Pickleball and those people who contributed paid for an ordinance to be written. And then I was thinking about, well, that's kind of a weird precedent, honestly. I mean, geez. But when you think about it, who can actually do initiatives? Only people who can come up with money. So in some ways, it's also like a lawsuit. Well, if you win, then you can get just the drafting of the ordinance, nothing else. You get that money back, because that allows you to actually have a foot in the game. Otherwise, you don't. It's just way too expensive. So my friendly amendment, which can be taken or not, is that the city reimburse for the cost only of writing the ordinance, which is not which you do not have to declare to the FPPC, right? So just in case you know, it's not considered an election expense. Okay, it's the drafting of a law, and it's a very different thing. Anyway, that would be my friendly amendment, because
I hear you.
You got it.
I'll decline, but I'm still looking for a second on my proposal.
Well, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion, please.
Yeah, I just want to, speak up for, I'm sympathetic to both sides. I've met with those that voted for, I met with those that are against it, and I feel terrible that I think with open, honest communication from the get-go, we wouldn't be in this position now. Sympathetic to those that, live there and their day is, not the same because of the sound and all of that, and those that put in the effort and the hard work to get it going. And, I wish we could go back and change things, but we can't. The only thing we can do is move forward from this day out with open, honest communication, so if there's an issue, we never have to deal with it again. And I just have to, like I said, been in touch with both sides. This is in my district, and I have those that, want the dawn to dusk. I had never read that in any of the, the ordinance or anything. There was never any time set, and that's why when the ordinance passed and I reached out to say, what are the times? And that's what initiated me to, say, hey, I think we need a meeting because I'm unclear and I'm new and, So I would just hope that we could, listen to more, the flip side of the community with limiting the hours. I think it's a great idea to turn it over to the Parks and Rec when you have a commission and let them, do the studies. There were, sound studies that, like we said, the city paid thousands, $13,000 plus that wasn't implemented. All of these things, and that's what I think is the way to kind of like right the wrong, to let's, hopefully work together, and we'll come back and with more community input, with open, honest communication,
Please clarify what you're proposing.
I don't agree with the dusk to dawn.
Okay.
I think we need more hours. We do have, how much money was just spent on the Soul Park pickleball courts?
Okay. So you're proposing less hours?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Yes.
I'm in agreement with Councilmember Mang. I think I would be in favor of going back to the hours that were there before the election. We've heard from the neighbors about dusk to dawn, or dawn to dusk rather. I mean, imagine waking up to pickleball, and regardless of that, the ordinance didn't specify as it was submitted for election materials. It didn't specify the timing, and so there were actually a lot of people who read it and who were voting thinking that it was going to be the same hours that were restricted from the beginning. And in the interim, we spend all this money building Soul Park, and there's new courts at Casitas, there are new courts coming up in Oakview, so there are so many places to play. This would be different if we didn't have those options. So I would be in favor of moving hours back.
I hear what you're saying, and let me, if I can respond.
Absolutely.
If you say, I'm looking at the measure language, and it says that, as was read, without any other city permission or permits, and implementing sound mitigation and adverse impact efforts be adopted. So I'm taking what we're thinking of right now as sound mitigation and adverse impact efforts. So, for example, I mean, that gives us that wiggle room. So I know I was going farther than what I think was offered as a concession, which was, I know one thing that was proposed that seems like it might be amenably accepted would be 8:30 to 12 winter hours, 8:30 to 12, closed 12 to 2, back on 2 to 5. That would be winter hours. Summer hours, 8:30 to 12, closed 12 to 2, 2 to 7 summer hours.
I would be amenable to that, because that is very close to what we had before, and it seems like a middle ground.
But it would be weekends also. Weekends.
So it would be
also.
open 7 days a week.
Just like all of our parks.
For the summer hours, I wouldn't want to go as late as 7 because people are getting home from work and wanting to do dinner, and I wouldn't want them to have to listen to that during their dinner. And then so my other thought is that I think we previously talked about giving the residents some time off on the weekend, and we decided a half day on one of those days. So, in the interest of compromising, I'd be interested in seeing us potentially have 2 weekend days, both weekend days open, but from noon to 4.
Could I speak?
Yes, please.
So just so you know, the pickleball community conceded from 8:30 to 12 and from 2 to 5, and the motion was not that. But coming into that, this is what the pickleball community agreed. So they conceded that in an attempt to cross bridges, and the summer hours, 2 to 7. And requested building an east wall along Ventura Avenue per the recommendation of both the sound study and the Park and Rec's recommendation, both of them, and investigate and figure out if it's possible to reinforce the south wall, which already exists, but it's possible with new technologies and sound panels. You have a wall, you can put that up. So, you know, I think there's room to move on the summer hours tonight, but not much. This will go to court. It will go. And, you know, if you read through this, it says clearly in the ordinance that this will be liberally construed, which means as broad as possible. It does not mean narrowly construed. It means liberally construed. That is throughout the ordinance. And, you know, then the question becomes, does permits and permissions, does, you know, constraining the hours translate into permits and permissions? But what the court is going to look at, and they're not going to care about the neighbors, honestly. They're going to look at what is the intent of the ordinance. They don't care about what the neighbors think. Honestly, they're going to look for the law, and the law is going to say this is to be construed liberally. That is, as broadly as you possibly can. That is what the voters voted on. They're not going to care that someone's going to come in and say, well, but the voters never really read it. Okay, that's not going to pass muster. Number one, because we have an impartial analysis that went with the initiative. That was the first thing that anyone saw that said the hours were normal park hours. It's going to be a huge tangle. I think it was pointed out that four of the five council members here were publicly voted against it. I think it will be pointed out that the city manager sent out an email from the major opponent to the city council the next day after it was certified. It's not going, the optics are going to be terrible. The pickleball community has conceded, and I don't think they're going to concede anymore. If you take away the weekend hours, you take away the ability of the public and the working people to play. And that's just a fact. So,
might I respond to what you're saying?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, just this. This might sound foolhardy, but I'm not feeling that lawsuit averse. What I mean more like is I'm trying to find justice, I guess. That's my real intent. And so from my point of view, I would say that, and anybody who's asked, my reticence about Measure O was simply about land use. It had nothing to do with pickleball per se, but that's neither here nor there. What I just proposed, those times, so I'll say it one more time. If it was winter, 8:30 to 12, closed 12 to 2, open again 2 to 5, summer 8:30 to 12 again, 12 to 2 closed, 2 to 7 open, and that includes the weekends. And I'll just say one more time for clarity that we do work on a project to mitigate the sound as Ms. Rule described, but as we said a minute ago, with clear signage, possibly locked, and then that blue paddle list. In my view, and we could disagree, that's the just movement from the pickleball conceding what they could. They're making a movement in that direction. So if I don't know what the protocol would be I would modify my motion to say that, and if I could get a second, maybe that could be what's on the table. So I'm offering that as I think a sense of justice, but I'm happy to hear from my colleagues.
You did mention paddles. What about balls? That's another.
I think
topic.
It's blue paddle list. Quiet paddle.
Owl? Is that the one that owl paddles?
The owl paddles are part of the blue list.
The owl paddles are part of the blue list. Yeah.
Mayor, would you restate the proposed hours you're recommending, please? Sorry.
Okay, so winter, 8:30 to 12, closed 12 to 2, open again 2 to 5. That would be winter. Summer, 8:30 to 12, closed 12 to 2, open 2 to 7.
And for clarity, summer would be April through September?
Would we use do you guys use the equinox when you do that as your guide?
We've done it different ways in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So we could go with the equinoxes. We could go, which would be we just need clarity, right? So the prior decision was April through September. That could be tightened if you wanted, or go by the.
How have you done it in the past?
April through September is summer.
Okay. Fine. Great.
So
Yes, please.
For purposes of discussion.
Yes.
I think I would support this if we reduce the summer hour to 6 p.m. And we,
Let us deliberate a little. Yeah.
yeah, and then, for the weekends, we did, 10 to whatever the concluding hour was, so that people would have their weekend morning off if they were upset by, the sound.
Were you saying, just for I'm asking for clarity, you starting at 10 and going to that end time?
What, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Winter 5, summer, for me, it would be 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And
But then you said the
and
starting
then
time?
on the weekend it would be start time at 10
Okay.
to either 5 or 6 o'clock. And I would support that for hours of use, and I support whatever equipment limitations we've had in place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So different than the ones that I just said, or the ones that I
No,
just said?
I assume that what you just said was what we've been dealing with
I think
in terms of equipment.
My understanding is it might be the blue paddle list might be broader than the one paddle, just for clarity.
Okay. I'm fine with that equipment proposal.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, I think 10. I think 9 at best. I'm no. So, I mean, the council can do it, but it's always been 8:30, and it's for people who need to play in the morning. 10 o'clock. By 10 o'clock in the summer, it's already getting hot. It's getting hot, and so that really doesn't work for the summer. It's always been 8:30. This is the mid ground. It used to be dawn to dusk.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was starting at 8:30, and then it was, you know, every other day from whenever to whenever. So this is the middle ground. This is our best chance. This is our best hope. Let's vote this and put this to rest. Otherwise, we will be back here, and we will be back here over and over. And if the opponents of no think that they have, you know, a claim, then they should make it legally. You know, make the claim if you think you have it. So because of the heat, you know, you can't. It's hot by 10 o'clock in the summer. It really is. So you have to play in the morning. And the courts in the summer, you know, it's hottest from 4 to 5:30. So anyway, I would ask you to reconsider that, and let's find it. I mean, the pickleball community came in with these concessions. I don't think that it's really fair to then start nickel and diming them. We could have started a nickel and dime concession at dawn to dusk, but we started here because they actually do want to find a solution, work on this, and move on after 4 years.
I hear what you're saying. I guess the question would be, what's worth hanging on? I suppose. Do you see my point there?
Yeah. I think there's the potential for another initiative, and I don't think anybody, really wants that.
Well, hold on, guys. Hold on.
I'm just going to make. Yeah, I mean, it's not great, but with a 20 vote margin, I wonder how many of those votes would have changed if the ordinance had said dawn to dusk. You may have lost those 20 votes.
I hear you. So would you state your hours proposed?
My hours proposal. So this would be a friendly amendment to your suggestion. Would be 8:30 to noon. Close 12 to 2.
Okay.
Summer, winter time, then 2 to 5 in the afternoon.
Yep.
Winter time, 2 to 6 in the afternoon, and on weekends start time at 10 a.m.
So so you said, so summertime, you're just proposing an hour shorter, so 6 instead of 7, if I heard you right. And then you said and then the weekends we're starting at 10.
Starting at 10 instead of 8:30.
Starting at 10 instead of 8:30. And then were you suggesting not closing 12 to 2 on the weekends? So they're starting later, leave it open. That's a concession, I guess.
Yeah, I'd do that.
Okay, so starting at 10, staying open, closing at those same summer or winter times on the weekend.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
Oh, okay. I can accept that.
and the equipment limitations that you suggested.
Okay.
And I guess my other thought on this is that we simply adopt this, but if somebody wants to bring this up to the Parks and Rec Commission and propose, I don't want to do a thing where we're doing something temporarily and this continues to be an issue. Let's see how this works, but the Parks Commission can always bring it back.
I would add just one tiny point, and some of you know this already because I've said it. I'm very interested in extending the bike path to Soul Park as one point. I'm also very interested in the negotiations of the lower Libby courts, which I'm not sure that happened well. That's just a side note, but something I'm going to be pursuing as another pickleball court on that place possibly. But to say this, another point is something I'd love to carry on as we go forward is to revisit these. I'm not saying rehash it. I'm not saying another workshop. I'm saying a few months from now to hear from the players, from the staff, how is it going? Is it working? Fine, the neighbors. I mean, all the above. How is it going? I always want to hear that. In fact, I wish I would suggest we do it on every single thing we propose and take on. So, I'm accepting your friendly amendment. I'm hearing upset, but I'm hearing for me it feels very close to what the pickleball people suggested. Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. The second does not accept it.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
I'll second it.
So let's wait. So one more time, just to make sure I'm on, because it sounded so minimal to me, but I'm hearing it not be. Would you, as you have it, will you state the hours one more time?
Winter hours, 8:30 to noon.
Okay.
2 to 5.
Okay.
Summer hours, 8:30 to noon, 2 to now 6.
Okay.
April through September. The 2 weekend days open with a start time of 10 a.m. with no midday break.
Okay.
And with the blue paddles?
With the blue paddle list authorized and clear signage, and that we would pursue all the sound mitigation wall that would come back to the council.
Yeah, and if the second has to be done by the person who seconded, that can be fixed by my making it a alternative motion.
Substitute motion.
Substitute motion, and so without making Weston restate everything again, I'll propose it as a substitute motion.
And I'll second it.
Okay. So the way that I'm, just to summarize, so I'm hearing the sound mitigation, the signage, the blue paddle list, and I'm seeing the same quantity of hours but slightly shifted on the times. That's how I'm looking at the calculation right now. But I'm also suggesting that we hear from staff, neighbors, and players in 3 months' time. How's it going? If we can, would you be willing to add that? In 3 months' time to hear?
To come back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with coming back.
Mayor, before we vote.
Please.
Thank you. Just wanted to note that if I've heard the Measure O proponents correctly, they will litigate, and if it's not dawn to dusk or some other reasonable compromise, it may be worth asking those who might be able to speak for them if they will accept this compromise.
Okay.
So we know what we're walking into.
Great. I'm up for that.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Are
sure if
you looking at
Councilman
me?
Rule,
Well,
or are you positioned to speak for them, or if not,
I am not positioned to
might
speak for
ask-
them. But you could.
Mr. Hertz may still be on the Zoom as
Yeah,
the
we
lawyer.
could potentially ask the lawyer, but the lawyer is going to take instruction from the clients.
I wanted to suggest Mr. Kraut, if he would be willing. Do you feel like you could speak for the community? Come to the mic, because I want to hear which part.
And get it on the microphone so your attorney can hear, among others.
Yeah, tell me which part is the unacceptable piece.
Well, the weekend, 10 to 12 or something? No.
Versus the 8:30 with a
10
break?
10 to 5.
No.
With no break for lunch.
No.
Okay. So let me just make sure. So if we said, oh, we're going to stick with the 8:30 to 12, 2-hour break, and then 5 or 6 in the wintertime, you would accept that?
5 or 6 in the wintertime?
I mean, well, five in the winter.
5 in the winter, 6 in the summer.
Well, the winter's going to dictate the time. It's probably 5 o'clock.
Uh-huh.
But in the summertime, what's the summertime?
Well, I thought you were offering again, a concession of 7 is what I thought you had said, but is that not correct?
7 in the summertime?
Yes.
From 8:30 to 12?
8:30 to 12.
12.
This is what I thought you were suggesting that you would accept. And then a break from 12 to 2, and then 2 to 7 is what you had said for
2
the
to
summer.
7, yes.
That you would accept that?
Yes.
But not 2 to 6?
No.
Okay. Okay. No, I hear what you're saying. I'm just, yeah, that's good for clarification.
And I think I'm, you know, Susan tells me not to repeat myself, but you cannot play in the summer after 10:30.
Oh, huh.
You just, it's too hot, even with shade. There, and especially for the older people, the courts clear at 10:30. The courts start clearing at 10. It's already 85, 90, only getting hotter, and you're playing on courts where the heat is rising. So that's the issue, is that 10 o'clock does not work to play.
Fair enough. Then if the break was 11 to 2 then, and it started at 8:30, that would work? Because it's too, well, I'm just responding to her point, that it's too hot to play at 11?
I personally stop at 10. I personally stop at 10 because the courts are always, 5, 6, 7, 10 degrees hotter because the heat's radiating off by then. So, and a lot of people stop at 10.
Okay.
Certainly a lot of people stop by 10:30.
So in the summertime, it doesn't start cooling down till 5:30, 6 o'clock in the summer.
I see what you're saying.
And it stays light till 8.
Right.
So.
But you wouldn't want there to be more of a break in the midday, just in case people do come?
No.
I see.
I
Yes,
think
please.
we can't lose the sight of the fact that there are people who live there.
Understood.
Who are the later the play goes, the longer that they're not able to enjoy their home. And as somebody who has had to sit through meetings over at our prior council chambers during the midday when pickleball is going on, you hear it, and it is very distracting from what you're trying to do.
I have heard that. But yes, I totally do hear that, and I also hear a vote.
We're standing here in front of you tonight, and we're giving concessions.
I hear you.
To the ones that have lost.
I get that loud and clear.
You had, at least Andrew had an opportunity to mitigate those several years ago.
Yeah. So what you're saying
I've
is,
only been on council for 2 years.
well, the way that I proposed it initially would have been acceptable to you. In other words, 8:30 to 12, and this is winter, 8:30 to 12, 12 to 2 closed, 2 to 5 winter. Summer, 8:30 to 12, 12 to 2 closed, 2 to 7. That's acceptable to you.
Yes.
And that would be 7 days, and then the wall, the signs, and the paddles.
Yes.
And we're talking about changing a couple of hours on a couple of sites. No, I'm saying that's what the council had also suggested separately. I'm clarifying what people said.
That is what people said, but those 2 hours are temperature degree of.
I'm hearing the criticalness of the hours. Yeah.
Right. It's.
Would you be willing, Mr. Whitman, to go to those hours or no?
I think 6 is reasonable.
Is it really worth? Is it this is a serious question. Is it worth holding it for that? If it is, great. Hold on, guys. Hold on. We're trying to figure this out. I'm waiting for you.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Kim.
Oh, Kim.
Lead me, Kim.
I know. Well,
It's
this
your
is
it's
tough,
your
you
district.
guys.
You've
it's
worked
my
with.
district. I talk with both sides and all that, and I'm gonna throw it out there, and please just hear me out. So with summer being hot, I totally get it. So I'm thinking, to be fair to those that wanted the other hours, could we adjust that 8:30 to, if you say nobody's on the courts past 10:30, to adjust there? Are you willing
That's kind
to
of what
do?
Leslie was suggesting, but not them.
Yeah, that seems, you know what I mean? And then the 7, 2 to 7 would be more doable, in my opinion, if they, we don't live next to this court. And I just,
The voters have decided.
I understand
Well,
that.
you know,
I understand that.
Ms. Lang.
There is something that I think is another consideration, and that is a lot of pickleball players that I've talked to, and have made a real clear decision not to play at the courts because they don't want to disturb the neighbors.
Hold on, well, guys-
you know what? I'm trying to
Yeah,
help
yeah,
you
yeah.
out here.
No, yeah, please go ahead.
And they, now that we have Seoul, they are enjoying those courts. So if we were to do these hours, there's a likelihood that it wouldn't be as noisy as it was before.
Well, I'm hoping that with what I just proposed, again, that's not an ordinance, that's a wish, and it's something that I intend to do, which is, as I said, a bike path to Seoul, one. Number two, possibly lower Libby courts. I hope that we spread out the play in some equitable way.
Could I say something else?
Yeah, please.
If people show up here in the morning, weekday, weekends, and that court out there is full, they're going to go to Soul Park, or they're going to go to Lake Casitas. They're going to see 16 people out there playing, maybe a couple in the paddle saddle. They're going to go, you know what? We're going to Soul Park. So it's going to take care of itself. It's going to level out. There's not going to be 50 people here like there was before. They're going to go elsewhere.
I'm hoping for that.
I think that'll happen.
That's what I hope. That's what I would love to see when we come back in a few months and say, how's it going? That we hear that.
Yeah, and this is why I really appreciated your proposal to bring people back 3 months from now.
Well, it's just to come back to us.
Yeah, it would be just a report out to say, because that's something that I've noticed that I've wanted in general, is to say, whatever it is, like, oh, is the street paving going the way we said?
Absolutely.
whatever we hope. Well, if you're
So with that coming back in 3 months, we would check with the neighbors and those involved, and also Mr. and Mrs. Crowd and Karen, the people.
Well, we wouldn't.
Well, I would say it would be something like this, to say we will have a report out, and anybody who would like to come comes. I expect this room, and we find out and we hear from Ms. Rivera how it's going.
Just,
yeah, please
and
go.
Just to be clear, that 90-day callback, it would not be noticed for a change, so it could result in us requesting that it come back for a change, but it would really just be a presentation. We'd act on it or not.
That's what I'm intending.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so are we okay? Then am I hearing that we're okay with the hours as proposed? As I'll say it one more time.
Thank you, please.
And is Ms. Rule the second on that? Okay.
Well, let's hear it.
Please.
As stated, here it is.
Yes, please.
Winter, and we're going to specify the winter again, Mr. Summers. Again, how is it?
Winter is October through March.
Okay. Winter hours, 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Courts closed, 12 to 2 p.m. Courts reopened, 2 to 5 p.m. Summer hours, 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Courts closed, 12 to 2 p.m. Courts reopened, 2 to 7 p.m. The staff is requested to work on sound mitigation walls to come back to the council with a proposal, that the blue paddle list is authorized for use, and that clear signage is in place. And I'm adding possible locked in off hours.
I was under the impression that the blue paddles were recommended because there's no way to enforce. And I think that the city manager knows that there's just no way to enforce. And if they're required, you will have people coming here, as happened for years, saying that there are people there not playing with blue paddles. What are you going to do about it? How do I send the cops over there? Why aren't you doing what you said you were going to do? We had that.
I hear
so,
what you're saying.
Yeah. So
blue
just for
paddles
them.
recommended per sound study. How's that?
Highly recommended, and there can be a big sign there.
Okay.
You know, I think that's fine.
I'm cool with that. Okay.
What about for clarification with the holidays?
What are our park situations for holidays now?
We're open.
Yeah, open.
Current parks are open on holidays.
I would say it mimics that. Okay. Any more discussion? Let's do it.
Mayor, for the record of the motion, I would like to add that it is 7 days a week.
7 days a week.
7 days a week, and also a 3-month return to council with a report.
Mr. Mayor, if we could jump in
Yeah.
before the vote, it may be worth asking if Mr. Kraut would commit to not litigate on these hours.
It's got to come back. So, I mean, he can't, I don't see until, so my problem, I'm fine with it. I probably would vote for it, but 3 months doesn't get us into summer.
No. It's
Yeah.
just a check-in. That's
Yeah.
all.
So I don't think that, I mean, I don't know. I would assume that his attorney would say you do not give away your right to litigate on
Well,
a measure.
I'm not asking for that.
Yeah, okay.
I asked for it, but it's up to the. I'm not a requirement for your vote.
I understood. Okay.
Roll call, Mayor. Councilmember Mang.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Lang.
Yes.
Councilmember Rule.
Yes.
Mayor Gilman.
Yes.
Councilmember Whitman.
No.
Motion passes 3-2.
Okay. Wow.
I thought you were voting yes.
All right, we're done.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, we did skip the approval of the agenda. We're seeking a council action on that.
Consensus covers it.
Okay.
What do we need to do?
Consensus covers it.
Understood.
Okay.
Well,
We're adjourned.
I want you to be here.
I don't, I'm a big